Breaking from Washington and Ottawa, President Donald Trump has abruptly terminated all trade talks with Canada, not over tariffs, not over policy, but over a television ad. Yes, you heard that right. The ad, released by the province of Ontario, used a digitally altered clip of former President Ronald Reagan, seemingly criticizing Trump's tariffs. Trump called it fraudulent propaganda, accused Canada of interfering in U.S. politics, and in less than 24 hours, ended trade negotiations that had been underway for months. Tonight, we're unpacking what really happened, why it matters, and how a 40-second ad could trigger the biggest U.S.-Canada trade rift in decades. To understand this fallout, we start with the ad itself. Earlier this week, the Ontario provincial government, led by Premier Doug Ford, launched a media campaign opposing Trump's newly announced tariffs on steel, aluminum, and automotive imports from Canada. One of the ads aired during primetime Canadian television. It featured a digitally reconstructed Ronald Reagan, the 40th U.S. president, delivering a warning about tariffs and protectionism. The ad used AI-generated voice and archival footage to make Reagan appear to say, "When America builds walls to block trade, it only blocks opportunity." It ended with a message on screen, "Free trade built North America. Don't tear it down." The problem? Reagan never said those words. The clip was a creative edit of an old 1988 speech about global cooperation. Within hours, it went viral, not just in Canada but across the U.S., sparking anger among conservative circles. President Trump responded swiftly and furiously. At a press briefing from Mar-a-Lago, he said, "Canada used a fake video to attack the United States and to attack me. This is election interference, like plain and simple." Within the same press conference, Trump announced the termination of all ongoing trade negotiations with Canada, including discussions around tariff exemptions and energy cooperation. His exact words, "Trade talks are over, terminated. Until Canada apologizes for that disgraceful ad, there will be no deal." He later posted on Truth Social, calling the video a disgusting, manipulated hoax and suggesting that Reagan would never have stood with Canada against American workers. The move stunned both countries' trade teams. Talks that had been progressing since mid-2025 instantly froze. To see why this moment hit so hard, let's rewind to the broader trade picture. Since returning to office, Trump has pushed a new series of tariffs on Canadian goods, including steel, aluminum, timber, and electric vehicles, arguing that Canada had taken advantage of U.S. manufacturing. Negotiations had been underway to revise parts of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. Analysts said both sides were nearing a partial deal. That progress is now gone. According to Politico and the New York Times, Trump's decision halts nearly $400 billion worth of cross-border trade talks and disrupts joint energy and auto industry supply chains. Economists warn that even a short freeze could raise prices on both sides of the border, especially in the auto sector, where factories rely on just-in-time shipments. So, this isn't just about politics. It's about money, jobs, and everyday costs. Canadian officials were quick to respond, cautiously but firmly. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau issued a brief statement saying, "The United States remains a vital partner. We hope for continued dialogue based on respect and facts, not misinformation." Ontario Premier Doug Ford, whose government produced the ad, faced immediate backlash from both Washington and Ottawa. Ford defended the campaign, saying it was meant to highlight the shared legacy of free trade and not to mock or mislead. But behind closed doors, Canadian ministers scrambled to contain the fallout. Sources told CBC News and AP that Ford's office didn't anticipate such an explosive U.S. reaction. Within hours, the ad was pulled from official Ontario channels, but by then, the damage was done. Trump supporters in the U.S. flooded social media calling for boycotts of Canadian goods, while Canadian commentators accused Trump of overreacting for political gain. So, why such a strong reaction from Trump? Insiders suggest it's partly about image and control. The Reagan ad hit a sensitive nerve, because Reagan remains a Republican icon. Trump has long compared his leadership to Reagan's, framing himself as the heir to the conservative legacy. By portraying Reagan as criticizing Trump's policies, even artificially, the ad struck at that symbolism. According to The Guardian, Trump told aides that the ad was an attack on the movement, not just on me. Political analysts also point out timing. The announcement came days after critical coverage of Trump's domestic approval ratings. Ending trade talks over an insult reframed the narrative, from defense to offense. It's also a signal to allies and rivals alike that public criticism, even from abroad, won't be tolerated. The economic consequences could be serious. Trade between the U.S. and Canada supports nearly 9 million American jobs and over 75% of Canadian exports. Ending negotiations doesn't stop trade overnight, but it freezes all new agreements, tariff exemptions, and joint manufacturing incentives. The auto sector is especially vulnerable. Factories in Michigan, Ohio, and Ontario are interlinked. Supply disruptions could hit U.S. assembly lines within weeks if tariffs remain. Meanwhile, Canadian lumber producers face new uncertainty as the housing market tightens, and the U.S. analysts say this standoff could cost both economies billions, while smaller border towns could lose cross-border business that depends on stability. The story exploded online. On X and Truth Social, Trump's announcement trended under hashtags like #FakeReagan and #Trade War 2.0. Conservative commentators framed it as proof of Trump's strength, that he is protecting American honor. Progressive voices and many U.S. economists, however, called it reckless, saying the decision could harm workers and small businesses. In Canada, the backlash was intense. Editorials in the Toronto Star and Globe and Mail blasted Ontario for reckless digital propaganda, while others blamed Trump for overreaction and governing by outrage. Even some U.S. Republicans expressed discomfort. Former House Speaker Mike Johnson reportedly said privately, "This could have been handled with a phone call, not a trade freeze." But publicly, few GOP figures challenged the president directly, wary of appearing disloyal. This isn't the first time personal politics collided with policy. In 1981, Reagan himself imposed tariffs on Japanese motorcycles, sparking tensions but reinforcing domestic manufacturing. Trump's decision echoes that approach. Only now the justification is a media insult, not economic imbalance. It highlights how symbolic politics, how a leader perceives respect, can influence billions in trade. And it raises a deeper question. What happens when diplomacy runs through social media instead of negotiation rooms? Show old Reagan photo, White House exterior. So what comes next? Canadian officials have already signaled they'll seek third-party mediation through the World Trade Organization and the USMCA Dispute Resolution Panel. U.S. business leaders, especially in the automotive and agriculture sectors, are urging a quick restart to talks. But Trump's team has said no talks will resume until Canada issues an apology and removes all related materials from circulation. Analysts predict this standoff could stretch into 2026 unless one side backs down. So here's the bigger picture. A single advertisement, 40 seconds long, has derailed a $400 billion trade negotiation, shaken one of the world's closest alliances, and reignited debates over truth, image, and leadership. Whether you see Trump's move as strength or stubbornness depends on your perspective. But one thing is clear. In 2025, diplomacy isn't just about treaties, it's about perception. And in an age where artificial intelligence can rewrite history, even a fake Reagan can change real-world policy. Thanks for watching. If you want more fact-based analysis of global politics and U.S. current affairs, subscribe and hit the bell icon. Because the world doesn't slow down, and neither do we.